My sister pressured my wife to stop taking her pills. Our baby's now in harm's way. Yet mom acts like it's not a huge issue. To be honest, I'm so rattled I don't even know where to begin with this. My sister could have just put my wife and baby at risk, and my mom is backing her up. Seriously, how am I supposed to handle that? So you get the picture. I'm a 26-year-old guy, and my wife is 28, and we've been hitched for 3 years. She's 7 months pregnant, and this is our first child, a baby we've longed for a long time. My wife has a medical issue that requires her to take medicine to keep her healthy. I won't go into the details, but it's a long-term thing she's dealt with throughout her life. Her doctor has made it completely clear that she absolutely must stay on her medication throughout the pregnancy. It safeguards both her and the baby. If she doesn't, there are considerable dangers. On the other hand, my sister has been obsessed with natural health for a couple of years now. I initially thought it was pretty harmless, her posting about different herbal remedies and detoxing. But it's become much more extreme lately. She's gotten involved with these online groups that are full of people who think medicines are dangerous and doctors are involved in some massive cover-up. She's certain she understands things better than the medical professionals at this point, and it's really hard to have a normal chat. With her now, everything's a lecture. Anyway, my sister, who's 32, showed up unannounced a couple of days ago. I was working and she hadn't called first. Ordinarily, I might have been irritated that she didn't give me a heads up, yet it barely crossed my mind at all. My sister and my wife usually get along well, so I assumed they were just having a friendly conversation. When I got back that night, right away, something felt wrong. My wife was on the sofa, her face was ashen, and she was restless, plus she didn't even look up when I came in. I inquired what was bothering her, and she just replied that we needed to talk. My gut twisted. She informed me my sister spent the whole visit haranguing her about how the medicine she's using is poisoning the baby. She said my sister kept going and going about how big pharmaceutical companies were lying to us and how my wife was endangering our child by giving her all these chemicals. Seemingly, my sister was so forceful and wouldn't stop that my wife cried. Then my sister said, "You can fix this. Just quit taking the pills. You don't need them." And this is the part that chilled me. My wife actually listened to her. She revealed she hadn't taken her medicine that day and wasn't certain whether to continue taking it. She seemed so embarrassed, as though she expected me to explode. But all I felt was pure panic. I tried to stay calm and explain that her doctor gave her those drugs for a reason, and that stopping abruptly wasn't safe, especially not now. She agreed with a nod and said she'd begin taking them again, but I could tell she was still disturbed. She repeatedly said, "What if she's correct? What if I'm harming the baby?" I felt so much pain for her. She's always seemed so resilient, yet her pregnancy has made her more susceptible, something my sister clearly used to her advantage. I was absolutely livid. I immediately phoned my sister and demanded to know what the heck she thought she was pulling. She didn't even say she was sorry. Instead, she became more insistent, stating she was merely attempting to safeguard her future relative. She truly had the nerve to call me self-centered for having faith in medical professionals rather than doing my own homework. When I instructed her to keep her nose out of our healthcare choices, she became hostile and cut me off. I figured that would be the end of it, just another disagreement between my sister and me, as usual. However, I called my mother for some reassurance. I described the incident, anticipating her support. However, she said, "Your sister simply wants to assist." "You're overreacting." Overreacting. I was stunned. My wife was crying, scared about our unborn child because my sister had played doctor from her armchair and my mom believes I'm the issue. I asked how she could possibly defend my sister and she replied, "You know how strongly she feels about this. She just wants the best for the baby." I've been simmering ever since. My sister put my wife's health and potentially my Bobby's at risk, and my mom thinks it's not a big deal. I feel like I'm inhabiting some different world where my family isn't concerned about the genuine dangers involved. My wife is back on her prescription now, thankfully, but she's still upset. She keeps inquiring whether I'm so angry with her, and honestly it just crushes me because she didn't do anything deserving of this. Someone who should have been there for her instead became her tormentor. Now, it feels impossible for me to place my trust in my sister or my mom anymore, although completely severing ties seems like a very harsh response. I really want to keep my wife and our little one safe, yet I really don't want this to blow up my whole family. So here's an update. I hoped things would have improved since the last time I wrote, but it's unfortunately not the case. Actually, it feels as if my sister and mother have made it their goal to worsen everything. My wife's health has declined dramatically. My family has become totally split and I've reached my limit. I still can't believe I'm putting this all into words, but here I am doing just that. Let me start with my wife. After everything that went down with my sister making her stop her medication, we had a long discussion, and she decided to start taking it again. I thought everything was good at that point, but it turns out missing even one dose can really throw things off. Her symptoms started resurfacing almost immediately. At first, she seemed more anxious than normal, which I figured was just from the stress of what happened. But then things got much worse. After a day or two, she was struggling to sleep. She was on edge, super emotional, and couldn't concentrate on anything for very long. Her illness, which I'm not going to name to protect her, has always been manageable while she's taking her medicine. But without her medication, it's like the world just crumbles beneath her feet. She kept saying things like, "I wonder what if the worst has already happened? And what if I've caused harm to the baby?" The whole situation was utterly devastating. We contacted her physician, and he wasn't pleased at all. He clarified that suddenly ceasing her medicine might lead to significant problems, affecting both her well-being and the baby's too. He said we'd have to carefully watch her and set up an immediate follow-up visit. While I was in that office, listening to the doctor detail all the potential problems, I felt like yelling. Everything could have been prevented if my sister hadn't decided to act as a medical professional. And speaking of my sister, she wasn't finished causing problems. After I confronted her and told her to stay away, she went completely ballistic on social media. She created a string of posts about how she protected her niece or nephew from being poisoned, and awakened the masses, referring to me and my wife, I imagine. She didn't say our names specifically, but anyone who knows us would easily figure it out. She portrayed herself as some kind of savior, and made my wife and I out to be the bad guys, too blinded to realize the truth. At first, I attempted to just ignore it. I believed it wasn't worth dealing with her craziness, but soon I began receiving messages from relatives. Some were understanding, asking if we were all right and what the issue was, but the rest. They were repeating my sister's arguments, claiming we were endangering our baby and asking why we wouldn't consider natural treatments. A close aunt, one I've always been fond of, actually contacted me to say she'd heard my wife and that we should be open to other methods. I nearly blew my top. I told her flat out that my wife isn't addicted but is dealing with a medical issue with medication a real doctor ordered. She wanted to debate and I wound up abruptly ending the call. That's something I've never done previously, but I just couldn't handle it. Then there's my mother. Oh, my mom. I went to her once again, expecting she'd intervene and silence my sister, but instead she fully backed her up. When I described the social media stuff, she said she's just really enthusiastic. She didn't intend to hurt anyone. I questioned whether she thought my wife's illness was no harm, and she said perhaps this is a signal for you to explore different choices. Your sister may have a valid argument. A valid argument. I couldn't wrap my head around it. My wife was truly suffering because of my sister's involvement, and my mom acted as if it was some sort of revelation. I informed her that she was encouraging my sister's behavior and that I wasn't trying to get her to understand. Her reply, "You're wrecking this family. I feel like I'm in some kind of television drama right now. My wife is having a hard time staying well. My sister is publicly attacking us, and my mom is behaving like I'm the bad guy for trying to shield my family. I've begun to contemplate if I should just sever ties. Putting all of it together is a challenge, yet the idea of my family falling apart makes me physically ill. My spouse has been incredible throughout all of this, despite the fact that I can see how much this is affecting her. She continues to apologize, as if this situation is somehow her doing, and I keep assuring her it's not. I absolutely don't hold her responsible. She's susceptible right now, and my sister exploited that vulnerability. I hold my sister responsible for instilling those uncertainties in her mind, and my mother for supporting her actions. The most frustrating thing about all of this, the fact that my sister hasn't once contacted us to see how my wife or the baby are doing. Not a single time. She's so sure she's correct that the actual results of her choices don't bother her in the slightest. In the meantime, I'm left to try and fix the damage she caused. The doctor increased my wife's checkups to ensure the baby's well-being. Everything seems all right currently, however, the possibility of issues still lingers. I'm striving to remain hopeful, but whenever I see her grimace or clutch her stomach, I freeze up. This is the last update. If you felt my sister persuading my wife to cease her medication was bad, you're unprepared for this. I discovered something that makes me feel like I never truly knew my family. What I thought was merely my sister's irrational fixation on alternative health practices turns out it is part of something far more sinister, and now I'm finished, totally done. Fortunately, my wife is doing better now. Things are progressing well with my treatment, and as of right now, the baby appears to be doing all right. However, the emotional wounds inflicted by my sister, coupled with my mom's defense of her actions, have caused me to reevaluate my whole family dynamic. Then, I made a discovery. It began with the content my sister shared online. Once she shared her triumphant tale of rescuing her niece or nephew from the toxicity of prescribed medicine, I began receiving more messages from relatives and acquaintances. A great many were utterly draining. Things like, "Why aren't you trying out alternative methods?" Or, "Is there absolutely no way to escape chemicals when you're pregnant?" But one message stood out from the rest. It arrived from a cousin who isn't a very close friend, and she said, "You really ought to check into who your sister's been communicating with. That's not just her acting overly dramatic as usual." That comment made me feel uneasy. I already knew my sister was deeply involved in some odd health communities online, but something in the way my cousin phrased it made me think there was more to the situation than I realized. So I began investigating. I scrolled through my sister's older social media entries, the comments, and even some of the group pages she displayed. What I uncovered was astonishing. My sister wasn't simply involved in some random Facebook groups promoting natural health. She had been collaborating with an actual health coach, a supposed authority from one of these groups, someone with no medical training who promotes radical and hazardous notions. This coach had been bombarding her with all sorts of. It's just crazy how some people spread misinformation, like saying prenatal vitamins are useless, or that all our health problems are caused by drugs. Here's the stunning part, though. My sister gave this individual money. Like, a lot of money. For the past year, she's been sending cash to these sessions and purchasing their specific products, which are essentially just expensive herbs and powders that don't do anything at all. This self-proclaimed health guru is the same person who told my sister she had to get involved and convince my wife to stop taking her prescription. It wasn't just my sister being pushy. This was planned out in advance. I talked to my sister about this whole situation. Initially, she denied everything. However, when I said the coach's name, her face went white. She started stumbling, saying this person knows exactly what they're doing and that they're saving people. I asked if she understood that my wife could have died because of her meddling or that my baby might still have problems because of what she did. She looked at me as though I was out of my mind. Then she hit me with a shocker. Mom agreed with me. She thought I was in the right. At first, I didn't believe her. I thought she was just trying to avoid being blamed, so I called my mom. I asked her straight out if she knew about my sister's plan to interfere with my wife's medicine. She didn't even try to argue. She said, "I didn't think she would really do anything that extreme. I thought she was just talking." I was speechless. My mom knew my sister intended to intervene and didn't say a word. It was awful because she actually supported it, thinking my sister could show us other ways to do things. My mom, however, felt her ideas about natural health were more important than her daughter-in-law's safety, along with the baby that was on the way. I reached my breaking point when I discovered my sister and mom were still in contact with that health coach. I saw texts on my mom's phone. She left it on the counter while visiting, and they showed her thanking the coach for helping our family see the truth. I snapped some photos of the messages because I knew I wouldn't be believed otherwise. This is when I made up my mind. I told both my sister and my mom that they weren't welcome in my life anymore, at least not for quite a while. I blocked my sister on every platform and informed my mom that until she admitted she'd done something wrong and stopped talking to that coach, I wouldn't be speaking to her either. They both totally lost it. My mom started crying, saying I was breaking the family apart. My sister sent me a lengthy email claiming I was brainwashed and insisted she only wanted to help, but I didn't care anymore. My focus is on protecting my wife and my baby. They are now my family. Here's what happened next. Within days of severing ties with them, I got a call from another family member. It seemed someone, most likely one of my relatives who supported my decision, had reported my sister to the authorities for practicing medicine without a license. I'm not sure what will happen next. However, I'm aware that she's completely losing it over this situation. My mother phoned me, pleading for me to fix everything, but I explained that it wasn't my issue to resolve.